price, the appearance, or perhaps the promise of reliability?
While most experts will tell us that very likely the decision is based on the brand of the product and where it originates. But how do consumers even begin to have an impression of a certain brand and what it stands for?
That's right. Well, the new program out on Channel News Asia has pretty good ideas of how to build a brand, especially an Asian one. It's called The Consultant, and in studio with us this morning is its creator and host, Yeok Dizol, and series producer, Shamla Rajendran. Good morning to both of you.
Guys.
Good morning.
Welcome. So I hear there was a lot of work put into this series, about 2 years in the making. What can we expect from this series? What are you trying to achieve?
Well, we wanted to have a look at the different brands in the region, because very often in Asia, when we look at brands, we look at Western brands. And we love Western brands and we buy them and everything. And we wanted to find out, are there any local or Asian brands or regional brands that have a big promise, that have a good story, and that can potentially make it big and even conquer the West? So we went out to a number of countries in Asia to just see what's out there and what makes them so successful. What are they doing right and wrong?
And what did you discover? What did you find out? What did you guys... Sham, maybe tell us. I mean, as you're working on the series, did some of the brands also surprise you?
I think they did. I think for a lot of times people think that Asian brands are not as good as Western ones, but during our journey in different countries, we found out that brands do, actually Asian brands, do have a strong hold. And I think more and more people, more and more Asians, even Westerners, are buying into the brand.
Give us an idea where you went to look for all these Asian brands that has the potential to make it big. Which countries did you go to?
We went to 3 countries, including Singapore. We went to Vietnam, Hong Kong, and Jakarta.
Is there a particular reason why you chose those 3?
We had many discussions.
Yeah,
actually.
we wanted to do many more countries and go very far, but we had to concentrate on a few.
Yes.
So we thought Hong Kong is interesting because it's in a different location. It's in North Asia, and maybe it's also on a different level of development. It's much more developed than some of the other markets. So it has more interesting, quirkier brands.
And perhaps more established.
Yeah, more
Yes, and
established
people
too.
know
And
them
Vietnam is just beginning.
It's just beginning. It's a very exciting market. We've found some really
All the
good
CEOs
brands.
are very young.
Very young and very dynamic. So
And Jakarta, of course, because it has the volume, it has the many people, so they have the market to really build their brand and sell their brand. And finally, Singapore, because we thought it would be interesting to look at Singapore and contrast it with the other markets.
So when you do the comparison, when you look at the different countries, the different sort of economic situation they're in right now, did you discover large differences between the brands or how they were portrayed?
Yes, I think so. Why don't you should tell them that.
It's interesting that most of the brands that we found kind of reflect the kind of culture that they're in. So in Hong Kong, they're kind of quirky, a little bit kind of different, even provocative, the kind of fashion brand issue that we looked at, or GUD for design. In Jakarta, it was very traditional. We looked at a cosmetics brand, which has this herbal ingredients, jamu, which is very Indonesian. And in Vietnam, it was about food. We looked at noodles and coffee. So it's an interesting mix, and all the brands are kind of rooted within the community, and I think that's what makes them strong.
Did you find that during your journey filming all these episodes, there was perhaps a common factor in Asian brands that would make it or break it to really go into the global market?
I think for Asian brands, the difference is there's none between them and Western brands as far as what does it take. Right? In my new book, I count 3 main points that we need to look at. They need to be differentiated. You need to be different. Right? If you're the same, people decide based on price. You need to be relevant to consumers. You need to understand your consumers and offer them something that is really relevant to their lives. And you need to be credible. Consumers, especially in Asia, are becoming more and more critical because they've been duped in the past. There was overpromise. So you can only promise what you can fulfill as a brand.
Do you think Asian brands have a bit of a tougher fight? Because in a way, as you mentioned earlier, I mean, Western brands are something we are so used to hearing about. We've grown up with them for many of us. And then now if a new Asian brand comes on in the same arena, you can't help but compare. And you say, well, I've heard that pitch before. I've heard that story. The other brand has it. So do you find that Asian brands, therefore, have a much more challenging uphill task?
It depends on what they're competing in.
Yeah.
If they're competing with the Western brands head-on, sometimes it's tough for them to be successful. So we found the ones that we talked to,
Yeah.
they found something unique that Western brands are not in.
Yeah.
They found an area where they have something to offer that nobody can compete with. If somebody started to build cars in Singapore, it would be very hard for them to compete with somebody like Audi, who we also feature how a Western brand appeals to Asian targets. But as long as they find something that makes them different and don't compete on the same level, then I think they can be successful.
I think I was pleasantly surprised because I didn't realize that the brands in Asia had so much more to give, because you know it's the stereotype of brands and Western brands, and I think we were pleasantly surprised too. You know, like Fur24, even the coffee brands, and even the smaller ones like X-Men. You know, they're selling skincare for men, and a lot of Vietnamese men are actually buying into these things, and I think the way they approach, they've got a lot of potential.
But do you think sometimes, sorry, that the local market itself treats its own people a bit unfairly? I mean, you tend to look down on your own local brand. So many companies have to go overseas, make it big elsewhere, and then come back, and then people say, oh yeah, these guys are something to look at.
Actually, that's a good point, because a few of the brands carried Western names,
Yeah.
like Fujitec. Did you know that it's not a Japanese brand? It's an Indonesian brand.
In Indonesia,
In
yeah.
Indonesia.
So
Yes.
they try and get that expertise, borrow that expertise from other markets, right? Unless they're very rooted. Like Mustika Ratu is this herbal skincare. They're rooted in the story in the
Ancient
palace.
palace.
So they're very Indonesian. But then somebody like X-Men, again,
Yes.
they have a
X-Men.
very Western presentation, and even the models that they use are kind of, you know, they can come
Caucasian
from
looking,
different
yeah,
markets.
So I guess there are different approaches that Asian brands can
That's
take
right.
when they want to market themselves overseas, you know, beyond their home shores. But do you think that is the way, or should they retain the unique Asian element in it? What do you think makes it, I mean, what do you think would take them to enter the global market and get that recognition?
I think in the long run, if you look at the main factor, which is differentiation, it'll probably be difficult to find an area how they can differentiate themselves if they're competing with Western brands head-on, or if they pretend they come from another market. I think the long-term success lies really in finding something that is rooted in Asia, that is relevant to Asian consumers, and that could even be interesting for people in other markets, because more and more people are looking at Asia, even from Europe or the US, to find what's new, what's interesting. My mom sends me clippings about green tea. I must drink green tea.
Right.
We know that. We've lived with that for a while.
Talking
so that's
about
their
that,
chance.
I hear there's a new trend in Asian brands and marketing. Going green and eco-friendly is
That's
something
right.
that you
That's
notice in your journey?
Yeah, especially in Singapore, we decided each episode sort of targets a different theme. So from brand positioning to communication. So the last one, Singapore, is on eco, going green. So is green the new black? We've always heard that. And we looked at some companies in Singapore like Spa Esprit Group. We looked at Greenpeace.com. I think they appeared here before some time back, to see what they are doing and how they're sort of selling themselves as a brand, and is going green the new way to go? Are people buying into the brand? And I think more and more people are buying into the brand, although it is an uphill task.
Yeah, but I interviewed one of the brand owners, and I asked her, "Is it just fashion? Is it just something that
A
is
fad that will
here
go
for
away,
now?"
right?
And she said, "Well, is global warming just a fashion?"
Right.
And we don't have a choice, she said. You know, and it's coming to Asia, and it was interesting to hear that this is not just something that we're picking up because everybody else following it. It's more and more, and in many areas, it's about different fabrics to
That's
use.
right,
We
bamboo.
looked at bamboo fibers,
Yes.
you know, made into a high fashion line and all of that. So I think it's exciting. It's interesting because all these things are very new for us.
Exactly, and people are getting more and more creative as well.
But you know, I know we got to end up here, but just to throw a span in the works, I mean, it could be a fashion in a sense. If something else comes about besides global warming, another big issue,
That's
then
right.
our priorities may change. So it sort of depends on what's happening in the market at the time, you know. But sorry, I mean, I just that would be a whole different debate. I know. Well, thanks so much for coming
You're
this morning, and
welcome.
good luck. We look forward to the show. And let's just tell people, I mean, just before that, in studio with us, brand consultant York Dizzle, who's currently hosting a new series, The Consultant, on Channel News Asia, and that program will air every Thursday night at 9:30 p.m.
That's right, that's Singapore, Hong Kong time, 9:30 every Thursday. The Consultant, do catch it if you're interested in big brands and Asian brands and how they make it big. All right, we're going for a quick break now. We'll be right back with more news updates, so stay tuned.